Okay, here we are again. This podcast episode is about the nature of 0 point energy. Now, I don't want to be flippant with this topic because it's something I've been exploring for most of my adult life. Following breadcrumbs, and just I've had an unexplainable curiosity surrounding it. And I just want to share with you now that this concept that I'm going to share with you has the potential to enable anyone that's working on free energy devices, propulsion devices, perpetual energy, and even zero gravity. It has the potential to unlock your vision. Some of the things that I talk about you will have heard of before, but you won't have heard it expressed quite in this way, in the way that I'm pulling it together as a concept, as an overarching concept. And my hope is that whoever hears this is someone that is working on one of these projects and has the potential to utilize this concept to unlock their project in order to move forward. But what you're going to understand by the end of this audio is that there's something that you're working on currently. If you're one of these people who's experienced, trying to prototype a device, a free energy device, 0 point gravity device, some form of a clean energy propulsion, and you're having this experience of feeling so close but never quite reaching it, then this is definitely for you. And by the end of this podcast episode, you'll understand exactly the reason why you've been experiencing that, and in fact why it's been so important that you have been experiencing that, so that you can integrate the understanding of it into your device. So what I'm sharing with you now, what you're going to realize is that this pattern that you've experienced, almost like a sabotaging pattern, like you can't quite reach the summit of the mountain, you can't quite get to a working prototype, although you can feel it in your bones that you've got something. You're getting these visions, you've got these concepts, they make sense, they make scientific sense, they make intuitive sense, but for some reason you just can't quite get there. Well, this podcast episode is going to share with you the reason why that keeps happening, and it's going to help you understand that it's the key that will unlock your device. Now, this is a very specific message, and I'm aware that it's not for everyone, but I know it will find whoever it's meant to find. So the first thing to share with you is that I need to give you the backstory of the nature of reality. Now, obviously, this is a massive topic, but I'm just going to give you, I'm just going to encapsulate it in the best way that I can to give you the context for what I'm going to share later. And so ultimately, the most important thing for you to understand is that your inherent nature is that you are perfect. You are perfect. You are perfected. And you, in the beginning of all of existence, as it was unfolding, the realization of that perfection came relatively quickly. It was probably eons of time, but it came pretty quickly. And the realization of that intelligence and of that consciousness was that I am perfect. That was the experience. I am perfect. Now, the issue with, it's great. It sounds great, doesn't it? But the issue with perfection is that it's literally the 0 point. And the 0 point is the perfected state, the state of pure perfection. But it's from the perspective of having realized that perfection, as opposed to in the beginning, where very early on, the realization was that I have the potential to become anything. So as we became aware of this potential, there's lots of desire, lots of creation, lots of envisaging, but as we grew more and more, you actually have a memory of this within you, by the way. It may surprise you, but if you're really committed to your own self-awareness, you can find this within you as a memory. But what I want to convey to you is that this consciousness was following its desire. I exist as the potential to become anything. And as I'm envisaging even higher potentials, I'm becoming more and more. But the issue was, the more expansive that this became, the less limited it became that it was aware that it is. And when the less limited it became aware of its nature, the easier it became to envisage something. And the becoming of that vision was almost instantaneous, to the point of where the moment the vision occurred, it was becoming the vision. In the moment it was being seen. And so you can imagine this process of continual evolution, realizing that I'm less and less limited, and the less and less limited you are, the less barriers there are between you and perfection. And so eventually the realization of that perfection came, and this was the 0 point. The 0 point is the point of pure perfection, of masculine and feminine, positive, negative, and it's the realized potential. So you see, once you become, it's not that within the 0 point, it's not the awareness that I've realized my highest potential. It's that I've already realized perfection. And the issue is that creates a stagnation before, well, it's not before, it's just, it creates stagnation, because in that state of awareness of being pure perfection, it's devoid of desire, it's devoid of meaning, and when it's devoid of thought even, and which means it's choiceless as well. So if you're in a state of awareness where you have no thoughts, you have no desire, you have pure stagnation, because there's nothing that is rising, there's nothing that is giving rise to you becoming more. And that causes intense stagnation, the realization of perfection. And so what happens in that stagnated state? So it's almost like the experience of being catatonic, very similar. And that's how I would describe catatonia, in fact, is that totally present, totally aware, but devoid of thought and emotion. And therefore devoid of meaning. And so I've talked in other podcasts about how meaning is what gives rise to matter. It's not actually, early on we became aware that what we were focusing our attention on was appreciating. So we're like, okay, everything I focus on is becoming more. Whatever I'm observing is becoming imbued with more and more energy, and it's appreciating. It's becoming more like money in the bank. Everything I focus on appreciates. As we went on, the realization and the understanding came to us of that actually it's not just what I'm choosing to observe. It's the lens that I'm observing it through. And so it's the meaning of what I'm seeing that is causing manifestation. And so the lens of perspective is everything. And so what eventually happened was the perspective of how powerful and perfect we are meant that there were no perspectives that were limiting our perfection. So in that state of being the pure observer self, that focus goes inward, and it goes inward with choiceless awareness. The inability to make choices, no desire arising, pure observer self, and it goes inward. So you imagine the 0 point, it's almost like if you picture, it's like an event horizon. If you imagine a black hole drawing all of the light into it, and then the event horizon, and then you imagine just below the event horizon, you imagine a 0 point, and that's the state of pure perfection. And so the perspective goes in, pure observation, going within, and it's an experience of that perfection. I am this, I am that. It's pure observation. And what happens is eventually the aspect of the 0 point, of the perfected part of us, and this is starting to get almost like inception, but that going inward, the discovery, because before it's all an evolution outward. It's all looking, I am this, I am becoming that. It's what you are seeing. But from the 0 point perspective, and if you imagine the black hole, that vortex is going inward. And so it's the same thing. In that state of pure stagnation, your focus is going inward, and you discover the perfection within you as well, you see. So in the beginning, it's all this outward expansion. I am this, I'm seeing, I am this. And then you also discover it inward. Now, from that perspective of inward self-awareness, the realization comes of pure perfection again. But what changes this time is an inspiration to negate the stagnation of the perfected state. So for some reason, don't know why, but when the realization of the internal perfection is realized, it gives rise to a desire. And I think that's because in that moment, the realization that I'm done. It's done. I've realized my perfected state above and below, and I am entirely whole. There's nowhere else to go. And so all of a sudden, you've experienced your entire existence as being unlimited, no barriers to your perfection. All of a sudden, you come to the awareness of outer perfection and inner perfection. The desire arises because you've hit a barrier, and it's your nature to conquer any obstacle and barrier in your environment. And so the perfection becomes, from your perspective, it becomes a barrier to your expansion. And so it gives rise to a desire. And that desire is to become more and realize more of my latent potential, to realize more of my dormant potential. And so from the state of awareness of being perfection still, it's the question of the self. How can I realize my latent potential? How can I activate and realize my full latent potential? And here we have the reality that we live in now. Now, how this reality came about is the solution to perfection. It's solution to the ending that comes from becoming aware of being perfect. So how does it work? What it does is it hides the perfection. It keeps the part of us that is perfect hidden from sight. And so what happens as a human being is we live in a universe that has got a very, very clever and ingenious algorithm behind it. And when I say ingenious, it's just extraordinary, the intelligence of it. Because what happens is, in this universe, it's been constructed where we can never reach perfection. It has a kill switch that prevents perfection from ever being realized, but it's been constructed in a way where the part of us that knows that we are perfect is always seeking that perfection. And that's what creates eternity. It's an eternal striving to realize our perfected. The part of us that we know internally is perfect. It's trying to realize that perfection externally. It's trying to see it so it's seen. And so the first place we see that perfection is we get a vision. If you're creating your perfect home, you can quite easily create a vision. It begins as a thought, of course, but you can easily form a vision of your ideal home. And you could create a perfect image of that home. And so to reach perfection would be to have that vision of the ideal home, and all of a sudden you're experiencing living in that ideal home. That would be the realization of perfection. But this universe that has a kill switch. And so you can never realize the perfection of a vision. Because the moment that perfection is realized again, stagnation kicks in and you're done. You're done. Catatonia is the outward expression of that perfection. There's no point, 0 point. And so, how does this work? So the best way to demonstrate this is to say, this. Now, for those musicians of you out there, and especially DJs and producers of electronic music, you'll know this, that 64 is a magic number. And I'm actually a DJ as myself, and I'm specifically a hard house and a hard trance DJ and producer. And all of the music is constructed in 64s, 64 beats. So you begin with 8 beats, and that's I don't know what you call that, but if you listen to those 8 beats, it feels incomplete. Play another 8 beats, and we call that a 16, 2 8s. You play a 16, feels incomplete. It feels like it's about a quarter whole. So you double it, it becomes a 32, what we call 32 beats. And that feels like it's half complete. And then you double that, and it becomes a 64 beats. And we call that a section. An entire 64 is an entire section. Now, if you're a DJ, what you do is you mix from the beginning of a section of 64. That's when you cue the second track to mix into that first track. You cue that at the beginning. You cue the track that's playing at the moment. You cue the second track at the beginning of a 64, but at the end of the previous 64, you see. And so when you blend them in, you've got a whole section of 64 beats matching another section of 64 beats, and it sounds organic, and it sounds natural, and it sounds whole. If I was to mix in the second piece of music on a 32 beat, it would be out of whack. It would sound unnatural and discordant. If it was on a 16 beat, it would sound even worse. On an 8 beat, worse. on a one beat, it would just sound like a train wreck. And that's actually what we call it. So there's this inherent knowing that the state of perfection is, you feel the state of perfection on a 64. So what I want to demonstrate to you now is the imperfection of the nature of the universe. So if you imagine a square, if you just imagine a square, and if you've got a piece of paper, you might want to draw it. So you draw the square on the piece of paper with all of the sides the same length. Now, if you take your pen or pencil and in the middle of the top line, you draw a vertical line from the top to the bottom to the other side. So you've split the square in half. You've got two rectangles. So on the left-hand side of the square, type half. So you've halved the square. So now take your pen from the middle of that line you've just drawn, and then draw another line out to the right so that it creates a square in the bottom right-hand corner. And that's a quarter. That's a quarter of the square. So you've got a half on the left, quarter in the bottom right-hand corner. And now if you take your pen or pencil, put it in the middle of the line you've just drawn, and now draw a line up to the top line, you've just created another two rectangles. In the left-hand side rectangle, you put 1/8, 1/8. Do it again. Draw a line from the middle of the line you've just drawn and draw it out to the right. And in that square that you've just created, put 1/16. And from the middle of that line, draw a line up. And in the rectangle on the left, put 1/32, 1/32. And then from the middle of that line, draw a line to the right, creating one more square, and that's 1/64. Now, this is the nature of a fractal. And this is the algorithm for consciousness splitting. So if you think of the square as a container, it's one thing. And logically, by continually dividing itself, it should always add up to 1 over 1, to a whole. But in truth, what happens is the fractal only ever reaches 63/64. Now, this is so profound that it's this truth alone that is the key to unlocking 0-point energy and harnessing its potential for propulsion. It's the understanding that we live in a universe that cannot reach wholeness or perfection. But the reason that we cannot reach wholeness and perfection is so that we eternally evolve and expand and seek that missing 64th. But what's brilliant about it is we can get super, super close to perfection, 63/64, but we can never quite reach perfection. And it's deliberate so that we're eternally seeking perfection, which means we can expand eternally and evolve eternally and continually realize more and more of our latent potential, which exists in the zero point. So, how this links to self-sabotage is that sabotage is the kill switch. So if you've got a vision for something in your mind, then if you're solely focused on the achievement of that vision as the perfect creation, you will never realize it. It will never come into existence because of this kill switch. And that's experienced by a human being as self-sabotage. Or some people interpret it as the universe pulling the rug out from underneath us. And this is what breeds this fear that a lot of human beings have of a future cataclysmic event, is because we're so conditioned to this kill switch that we we kind of half expect it to happen, and we're expecting it to happen mainly when we're on the verge of realizing our vision. And, this is the nature of this universe. In some ways, yes, it's a prison of our own making, but once you understand this, you'll never be imprisoned ever again, because it's very, very simple to negate ever sabotaging ever again. And that is to expand your vision beyond the what you're focused on creating now in the present moment. Whatever the goal is that you're moving towards now, all you need to do is make sure your vision is way beyond the achievement of that goal. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you want to buy a house, and it's been a vision and a dream of yours for, could have been years. You've been working towards it slowly. You're totally focused on your first home. And so the perfection of your vision is the purchase of your new home. Now, a lot of people experience sabotaging behavior around getting into their first home. They feel like they can never quite get into it. And the reason for that is because the focus on getting into your first home is so intense that your vision, realizing the perfection of your vision, means that as soon as you buy that first home, you've realized perfection. And that perfection has to be hidden in order for this universe to work. So you'll be able to get to 64ths of realizing that vision, but understanding that the intelligence that created the setup is the higher mind that every human being shares. So if you're at an auction, you're trying to bid on your first home, and you just get pipped by someone else, and it's out of your budget by $1,000, that's the missing 64th. That's blocking you from realizing the perfection of your vision. So the key to negating that sabotage, and in fact, this is the only way you can do it, is to take your vision beyond the first home and change the perspective that you're viewing it from. And so how you would do that is you would look at the first home as the means of buying your second and third home. So you're not totally focused on this first home that's the holy grail of, that's the summit of your mountain. You create a vision where the achievement of that goal is a plateau on that mountain towards reaching a higher summit. And so in the context of buying a house, getting into your first home, it's to go into that, buying that first home and utilizing it to leverage the purchase of your second and third home. And that's really what, this intelligence that we all share, that's what it's going for. It's going for the most expansive potential within all of us. And so if your vision is to purchase your first home so that you can leverage the equity to buy a second and third home using revolving credit or, however that may be, then you, the distance between the perfection of that vision and where you are now is much, much greater, so that kill switch will never be activated, because you're always a reasonable distance away from the perfection of your ultimate vision. So once again, it's all a matter of perspective. If you're super close to your ultimate vision, you've got to take your vision out beyond that. So I know that'll make sense, but so back onto 0 point energy. Hopefully that's encapsulated this properly. For those of you that are working on 0 point prototypes, any kind of mechanism based upon perpetual propulsion or energy, hopefully that's given you enough of a backstory. If it hasn't, feel free to email me. Wherever you're listening to this podcast, there'll be a link to be able to email me, my team somewhere, and they'll make sure it gets to me. So how do you harness this for perpetual energy? And it's quite simple. Well, I say it's simple. It's not simple at all. But the concept is very simple. Because to think about the 0 point energy as the state of pure perfection, and if you think of it as latent or dormant potential to become anything, and the moment when you realize that the moment, so it's in its perfected state at the 0 point, at the state of pure equilibrium and wholeness and perfection. So if you think of an electromagnetic field, it's where the two poles meet. And the center is the 0 point. Now, when you look at the electromagnetic field, if you look at the torus now of it, then what you're seeing is you're seeing it expressing. So it's being expressed. And so once you realize that once it's being expressed, it's seeking its perfected state again, coming back to the center, you see, and that's how the poles work. Is the moment it's expressed, it's seeking its perfection again. Radiates out, and the moment it radiates out, it's seeking its perfection again, coming back into the center, and that's how you get the poles. So the key is to create an environment. Now, this is really important. So I'm just gonna make sure you're focusing on this now so that you hear this. When you can create an environment for that torus, an external environment that is deliberately imperfect, that disrupts its natural state just enough that the energy behind it seeking its perfection again, you feel the impetus of that, the force of that. It's the seeking of, once you put that torus into a state of imperfection, understanding that it's going to seek its perfection again, if you can create an environment and a state and an environment for that torus where it's causing it to express itself imperfectly, and its nature of seeking the perfection again, that's where the energy comes from. So how can you take away its potential? And, this is beyond me how this is going to work. But how do you create an imperfect environment for that torus? But it's not, it can, where it can get really ultra super close, because this is the key. All of us know that the most powerful force in the solar system is the black hole at the center. Well, let's say the galaxy is some gigantic, ridiculous black hole at the center of our galaxy. The gravity of it is ridiculous. That's the 0 point. Now think of the event horizon, the force and the energy of the gravity around the mouth is intensely and insanely powerful. And so imagine the most powerful force of gravity on that event horizon. And I don't know enough about, the mathematics or the physics, but imagine being so close to the 0 point, which is down the spout, but you're 1/64th back. And so imagine the force of being 1/64th short of reaching perfection, imagine the force of trying to reach that perfection. You see? So if you can create an environment for anything that radiates energy, and you can somehow alter its environment so that the force that's being radiated out on its journey back home to perfection, you block it. You block it when it's 1/64th away from reaching the 0 point again. If you can prevent that from happening, the force of it trying to move from that state to its perfected state will create a perpetual energy source that perfectly mimics the nature of this entire universe. And this is how it works. So hopefully that makes sense. That's all of the concept that I'm going to share on this podcast. I just wanted to just open your mind to the potential of this first, just so that you understand that the nature of how, radiant energy works. That it's pushed out of the 0 point, it's expressed out, and it's immediately seeking its perfection again. And the force of that reaching that perfection is strongest when it's closest to the event horizon. And that's how you can take the nature of this universe and create something that expands eternally, is by creating an environment where it can never reach the total perfected state, which is the 0 point. And that's it. So as I'm recording this, I'm not sure if I am actually going to share it publicly, whether I need to give it more thought about how this is going to be utilized, who's going to be able to utilize it. But my hope is that it's going to be fine to just share with everyone, and my vision for the highest potential for this is what I would love to see. I would love to see this concept activating people who are stuck on creating prototypes for all sorts of different projects relating to perpetual energy and propulsion. And I'd love to see them, this first and foremost, for the first thing that they do with this information is to bring the focus they've had their entire lives, to bring it off the production of the prototype, to expand their vision beyond the prototype. So if you are creating a prototype, that the perfection of the realization of your vision isn't a working prototype. It has to be the generator farm that it's going to slot into, so that you can bring your focus into the goal that's in front of you of having a working prototype, that you're only creating that so that you can build a generator farm, which can then power an entire block of houses. You see? You have to expand the vision beyond it and keep your focus on the generator. You can't focus on the perfection of the working prototype, because it will continually sabotage because of exactly what I've shared with you. And so it's kind of, it's not a coincidence. This is how it was meant to unfold. The intelligence behind this, the genius of it, is so extraordinary that the intricacy of someone wanting to create this perpetual energy source experiences the nature of it through the sabotaging effect of never being able to get to a working prototype. That the discovery of the solution for the working prototype is in the nature of how they're experiencing it being sabotaged and pulled away from them by the kill switch of this missing 1/64th. So that's the first phase that I hope that this can enable these people to expand their vision far beyond the working prototype being the summit of the mountain. How is this device going to be used? What kind of car, is it an engine? What kind of car is it going to be in? What do the roads need to look like? How does this impact the industry? Who are the types of people that need to be aware of it? How can you use it to spawn other projects where people who build cars? You've got to bring the focus of your vision off of the prototype itself and onto the nature of the environment it's going to be contributing to, of the ecosystem, and how that changes because of it. And then, only then, are you going to stop experiencing that feeling of it being sabotaged. And here's another tidbit for you, for those of you that have fear around the fact that, you're onto a perpetual energy source, and what will the oil companies think, and da-da-da-da-da. That is a manifestation of the kill switch. It's a manifestation of the kill switch. Remember, we are one mind. We share one mind. And you will, if you have an intense focus on reaching perfection of one thing, and you try and control your environment to such a degree that you almost reach that perfection, like what I did, if you listen to my last podcast on the nature of sabotage, I experienced catatonia. I experienced the catatonic state that comes with almost reaching that perfected state, because I've been at it for so many years seeking that perfection. The higher mind that we all share will eliminate that perfection. It will not happen. Perfection will never be realized in this universe. Never. So hopefully you find some freedom in that, but understand that your safety and your the protection of your creation is built into how expansive you can take your vision now. Take the focus off the prototype, take it into the environment that it's going to create, into how the contribution of that into the environment is going to transform the planet, and keep that as your focus, so that this is just a goal along the way. It's just one of the milestones. Yep, okay, working prototype. Once I've got the working prototype, production facility, look for, if it's an energy source. Okay, so beta testing, I'll try it on my house first. And whilst that's happening, we'll start lining up a village, who we can test the generator on powering a village. And all of it's just happening in parallel. And you've just got, the prototype is just, it's one of the milestones that you achieve, as if you're creating anything. It just so happens that the thing you're creating is going to usher in a new epoch for humanity. That's all. So, hope that makes sense. If you want to catch up, just flick me an email. And yeah, I will, if you've got any ideas, if you want other podcasts, if you want me to elaborate on anything, if you want clarity on anything, just send me thoughts, ideas, inspirations, and we'll take it from there. Okay, that's it for the nature of the 0 point and 0 point energy. Cheers for now.